I want to call up now Peggy Einemer, who is the Executive Vice President on Media Entertainment for LRW, which is Lieberman Research. She consults on strategy and branding and positioning and program research, helps clients navigate changing entertainment landscape, self-proclaimed entertainment and gadget junkie. Peggy is a former NBC researcher, Phi Beta Kappa, summa cum laude. Let's bring her up here so she can get going with Dana, and hopefully we'll have a lot of time for some Q&A after that.
Nice to meet you. Pleasure.
Wow, I think you reach a point where your academic credentials probably shouldn't be in your brief. But anyway, first of all, I want to applaud you. That was awesome.
Thank you.
And especially for a first time, you are so welcome.
Thanks.
Two caveats with me. A, this is my first time, so please be kind. Interviewing, that is. And secondly, I lost my voice mysteriously 2 days ago. It comes and it goes. I'm doing the best I can. So, we have heard a lot over the past day about the explosion of content, roughly 500 shows, in 2017 alone. So building on your idea of the content aggregator, can people hear me okay? Okay, cool. How do you envision consumers efficiently finding content that they want to watch? In other words, the device you have invented is awesome. It'll have every possible thing they could have access to, things that they might have to pay for to have access. But I think there needs to be a layer of curation to make it so that when I see it, it shows me House of Cards and Stranger Things, and when your daughter sees it, it shows her something else. Can you build on how you think that might happen and who might do it?
Well, no one can do it until, as I said, the APIs are opened up. And a big reason they don't open up the APIs is because they don't want to, that would, I think, would release the numbers. But they would need to do that to accomplish what you're saying, because that's how you find out what's trending or what's popular or what is getting the most attention or tends to be in line with the types of shows you like, sort of like what Netflix already does with their recommendation and showing you what's trending or what's popular or what's new. However, if the aggregator was working, that would be an easy solution for it. But I also, I think that great content people always find, and I always think that it's interesting how videos go viral. They don't go viral by advertising. They go viral because they're good or people are interested in them. So I think that's what we really need to, good content, people will find it. Something like the aggregator or other devices or systems in place to do that will only help encourage that.
So, speaking of finding great content, the House of Cards, the success of House of Cards is attributable, obviously, to it being an amazing show, so thanks to you for that. And also, I've heard or read Netflix's ability to use data to actually optimize the experience for its subscriber base. Can you share with us beyond that what you think makes the series so appealing?
Well, we were very fortunate and lucky that the first 4 seasons, as we were shooting them, we seemed to be predicting the future, not intentionally. There was a time when I joked with Bo Willimon, the main writer, that whatever we want to have happen in the world, he should just write it, because it tended to, whatever was happening in the world as we released our series, it kind of went along in line with that. So that definitely helped, and just the climate that we were in was a huge part of it. The other was how we just launched that whole series was Netflix. We were the first original programming on Netflix, and they weren't as big as they are now and didn't have development people or any of that. And they said, look, you guys do what you do best and we'll do what we do best. And they really stayed out of it, and they utilized their data. That's how they came up with the idea that's to release all 13 episodes at once, which I think was a huge part of our success, because it allowed people to have that slow burn and to get into it. So if the first episode kind of drags a little bit, you kind of get up over and get going into in the second and third episode. And we were able to do things that normally we wouldn't be able to do. If we were at another network, I don't think we would have been able to kill a dog in the first act of the show. Like right off the bat, we killed a dog. You never killed a dog. That probably would have been the first note that we would have gotten from a network. So I think it was just allowing the creators be creative, gave us the great quality show that we had. and then how Netflix rolled it out. The two of those combined was, it was a perfect storm.
So in your speech, you made reference to water cooler and the concern that having all episodes available at once would essentially kill that conversation because people are in different parts of the show. Yet, at least in my circle of friends, Netflix has been one of the most talked about shows ever. Related to that, everything we've heard today about all this extra content, just 500 plus shows, in all the research that we've done, we have seen a growing importance of word of mouth, right? We all know who those TV mavens are. Alex on my team told me about a show on Amazon recently. What do you think drives word of mouth for TV shows? What do you think actually drove the buzz that made House of Cards so successful?
Quality, a good show. You don't hear many people telling you to watch a show because it's not very good.
Okay,
sorry.
do you think there are specific parts, like, for example, killing the dog? Zoe.
Oh yeah,
Zoe's death in season 2.
Doing a lot of things that were out of the norm of, we killed one of our main characters in the first episode of season 2. Again, spoiler alert, but sorry. And we were very locked down and tight-lipped. I don't know if we could do it now because Netflix is bigger, production is bigger, but we had Kate Mara who played Zoe. We had her go into set, we weren't posting anything, weren't allowing anything to be said. Kept it really tight-lipped, so it was a shock and surprise because everyone went into that. We just let the town think that she was still a member of our cast all the way through the production. And so when he throws her in front of that train, and she's in the first episode just like she was going to be through the whole season, and then when he throws her in front of that train, that really shocked people. No one saw it coming. So things like that of just how we handled it internally, and then how it wasn't led out there. And then the audiences too. In the first season, I think that wouldn't have worked, something like that with the main character, because audiences weren't as acclimated to no spoilers. But as binging and releasing all the episodes became more the norm, people got more sophisticated and saying things like, "Did you see it yet?" before they talk about it. Where it used to be when it was on weekly, or a show was on weekly, they would just assume everybody had seen it and you were allowed to talk about it freely.
So changing gears slightly to talk about movies. You mentioned some stats about the box office being, I think, at an all-time low for 22 years.
No, the revenue is at a 22-year high.
Sorry, I meant box
Attendance.
office attendance.
Yeah.
Yes, 3D and everything has helped jack up revenue. I think all the things you mentioned are contributors. The fact that we have 70-inch TVs, surround sound systems, people like to go to the bathroom. But I'm curious, I've had several people mention to me this theory that the rise of great content that one can binge creates an experience that is probably more immersive than going to a theater, sitting at home and watching, 6 episodes of House of Cards. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's related?
I think it's true, and it's also part of Netflix strategy is at the end of every episode, the end credits don't even run, and that timer's counting down, and I think it seems to be getting shorter and shorter, and then you're already into the next episode. When we release House of Cards, I get emails all the time at 3 or 4 in the morning going, "You bastard, I have meetings at 7 a.m. and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm still watching this show." So, yeah, it's definitely, it's a combination of all of that, of how it's delivered to them being in the comfort of their own home, and having quality programming.
It's funny you mentioned that. We once did a week-long set of blogs with respondents about their TV viewing habits, and we had some people just say, "I stayed up for 12 hours until my eyes hurt, and then I felt guilty about it, and then I did it again the next day." You mentioned your daughter's relationship with her tablet and with YouTube. You also mentioned Frank and the VCR. Interesting, I've found that you didn't mention the YouTubers that kids like your daughter are getting addicted to. Do you see a world where those YouTube and long form coexist, given that we hear that 61% of Gen Z prefers watching YouTube to TV? Or do you think there's any threat to the hours spent with long-form content, given how much time is being devoted to short-form by this generation?
I'm conflicted on it in a few ways, because short-form content is there's definitely a future for it. While the production quality doesn't seem to be that great, it works. Kids love it and watch it like crazy. As for the YouTubers and the YouTube stars, there have been attempts to try to bridge them over into traditional television and films, and it hasn't really worked. And a lot of what people were looking at was like, well, they have millions of followers, so that should translate into them coming to a theater or them tuning into television to watch them there. And so far, that hasn't really happened. I think eventually it could, but it's going to have to be the meeting of the traditional television and movies and the quality of the YouTubers. They're going to have to get to the same plane at some point for them to interconnect and for that to really work and for that to pay off.
What about social media? I'm curious, when you were producing The Social Network, did you ever anticipate that Facebook would become such a huge platform for video?
No. Ironically, so it was, I think, 2008, 2009 when I took that into Sony. And normally it takes forever to get a film made. It takes, like 21, for example, it took me 6 years to get that film made, from getting it through development hell and Sony acquiring MGM or part of it, and just the changing of the guard and so many different executives. With The Social Network, that was the fastest I ever got a movie made. It was 2 years from inception, from me hearing the story about Eduardo to screen. And part of how I did that with Sony was once we got the script from Aaron, I put the pressure on him. I'm like, look, we don't know, Facebook could be the next MySpace. It might not be here in 6 months. So we need to move, otherwise the story's not going to be relevant. And then when we were doing the poster campaign, which the one now is, everybody knows is 300, make a lot of enemies, what is it, 300, I don't know what it is, 300 million friends. Do you have to have a lot of enemies, something like that? I can't even remember my own tagline. Anyways, when we were doing it, I think it was, as we started production, we started first seeing the first mock-ups. I think it was 80 or 100 million. By the time the movie released, it was 300 million. Now it's billions. So yeah, I didn't see Facebook even turn into what it turned into. Once it started going, and once Netflix launched, I then realized that all of those platforms could do what Netflix did. If you have a network of consumers, and I've said it before, and I said Facebook, I've said Snapchat, Twitter could do it. They haven't yet. They're one of the only ones I think that haven't done it that I said. But all of them can do that because they can all do exactly what Netflix did.
So I want to go back to a question about content discovery. Given the explosion of content, given the fact that you can watch it on SVOD, direct-to-consumer, linear TV, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever, what advice would you give to, and at the same time, you have the fact that people actually don't see on-air promos anymore because fewer people watch linear TV. What advice would you give to marketers about how to get their content noticed?
Well, I've had a few ideas in the past. One of them, I went to Microsoft when they were doing the new Xbox, and I sat in a boardroom with a lot of their executives. And one of the executives there told me that DVR capabilities would eventually be taken away from the consumer, which I just kind of laughed. I'm like, you can't give technology to an audience and expect that you can take it back. And we all know appointment viewing is dead, and everyone likes to fast forward through the commercials. And now some of them are even cut out when you DVR, VOD your shows. One thing I always thought that would be interesting and cool is, particularly when TiVo first came out, and we could still do it, is offer premium advertising. So rather than watching 5 or 6 commercials or 5 or 6 minutes of commercials, if you're going to fast forward, you can fast forward, and rather than, whoa, let me stop there or there, make sure you stop right at the beginning of it. You fast forward and you get a 30-second premium spot. So all those 5 or 6 or whatever commercials they are playing, it gives them something else to sell. It's a premium spot. They fast forward, they're going to see this. So you fast forward, you get a 15-second or 30-second commercial, almost like what pops up in the most awkward times during a Facebook video now. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but you're watching it and suddenly an ad just pops up. There's no break. It just pops up. Similar to that, but where the normal commercial breaks would be. So they can watch a few commercials, or they can watch a 15-second one and jump all the way through them. It's about the same amount of time that you would spend fast forwarding and then, oh, let me go back a little bit, oh, back forward.
Perfect segue to my next question. So the idea of reducing the role of aggregators like HBO or even the SVOD services probably make many people in this room cringe. But to your point, it's made feasible by changes in tech. So how do you envision monetizing that content for all, monetizing all this D2C content? Do you envision a world where consumers will pay a certain amount for a season of House of Cards? Do you see it being ad supported? And if so, what kind of new ad models, you mentioned one, do you think might evolve to deal with that?
Well, I think it's a combination. The idea I was talking about of going direct to consumer with a show like Game of Thrones or House of Cards, that the user would pay for. They already pay for now with their subscriptions, and they watch it and binge viewing. They watch it in 2 or 3 days or a week or a month. So basically in 1 month of their subscription. So if they're really only getting HBO for Game of Thrones, if they could just buy it for something that's probably cheaper than a month of a subscription to HBO, it's going to be saving them money. And if you're cutting out the middleman, all of that money is coming directly to the financiers and to the creators. So it's a lot cheaper for the consumer, and it's a lot more for the financiers and the creators. As far as advertising, that can be done it can be done like placement is in films now, where you can leverage marketers and with product incorporating into the shows. One thing I haven't seen us do, which I thought would come back, was like the Craft Music Hour, which was in the 50s or 60s, I think, where they sponsored the whole show. I mean, we see it a little bit now, but like imagine if it was just at the top of the show, Chevy, brought to you by Chevy, and then it's House of Cards, and then you can buy a cheaper version of it or get a free version of it that they give out, and Chevy pays for it. I think that's one way, or dropping ads into the shows themselves, and for a discounted rate or free.
So do you see a world where a lot of this content is offered at a premium price to be ad-free and at a reduced price to be ad-supported? And if so, do you think the younger generation who've grown up with a Netflix not watching ads will pay?
Will they pay with ads? No. Will they pay without ads?
Will they pay for without ads?
Yes. Because if you can get it without ads, I mean, it'll be it's like Hulu. If you look at Hulu, what they do now, they give a variety of options. YouTube does it as well. You can get YouTube Red and there's no ads. So the model's already there and it is working. It's just once it becomes more of the norm, that's where it'll really start to flatten out. Something like the aggregator I was talking about, part of the revenue stream for that would be, because all it's doing is aggregating, would be advertising. When you go to that home screen, it's almost like Roku has it now on their home screen, they have advertising. But if you're tying in all of your services into one, ads could be there. So as you're browsing, there could be again, that Chevy ad could be the background. It could even be automatically playing when you go to find all your shows, just like when you go to Netflix now and the show that you're on automatically starts playing a trailer or a scene from it. The ads could be playing in the background while you're just browsing around and, Netflix and chilling, but browsing and having ads in the background. So there's a lot of ways advertising is definitely not dead. I mean, that's how we find out about things. It's changing of how we need to think about it to get it to the consumers.
Thank you. Okay, I have one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the room. So I re-watched the penultimate season of House of Cards on the plane, like the whole thing. Awesome. It required 2 viewings to actually know what was going on, but maybe that's just me. Can you give us a little bit of a preview of how awesome the next season's going to be?
It would ruin it. We are coming back, and it will be just 8 episodes. But this is it's like a bonus season because we had only planned on it being 5 seasons. And initially, that dinner that I had with Fincher, we talked about it and how that was planned out and how he saw it going was it would be Frank's rise to become president. Not as quickly as we made him president, but he wouldn't become president until the 5th season, and then we were going to end after the 5th season. What we discovered while we were doing the show, though, that it's a lot more fun to watch somebody try to hold on to power as opposed to the rise to power. So that's why we escalated the amount of time it took for us to get him to become president, and then we were going to have it end after season 5. But the numbers were there, and then I don't know if we're going to spoil for anywhere, but now with Claire, at the end of last season, it was like we've got to show that.
So at least we'll get a woman in the White House one way or the other. On that note, I'd love to see if the audience has questions.
We're running a little behind, but we're going to move the track back a little bit. So we start the networking. So we do have about another 5 or 6 minutes for some questions. So let's open up the floor.
I have a question about the opening moments of House of Cards. I think everyone remarks on the beauty and the gravity and of both the image and the music. Can you tell us a little bit about how you crafted that? And it seems to me to set the tone for the show, but I'd love to hear you talk about how it sets the tone for the show.
Well, that's not me at all. That I saw, and I'm like, that's genius. And that genius was David Fincher. And he's very good at crafting, and setting a mood and a tone. That's one thing I've always done as a producer, and I say it a lot, where it's if I get everybody in the right positions and doing their jobs correctly, I have the easiest job in the world because I'm just setting the army loose and saying, go do it. So that's basically what happened there, and was all David Fincher.
Hi, I'm Leanne Pritikin from Viacom, and a lot of us do research with creative development teams and producers, and I was curious how and if you utilize research and how that influences your creative process.
I don't. I see a lot of research. The most research I've ever seen on a project I've worked on, though, was 50 Shades of Grey. Saw so many stats and crazy numbers from a variety of different things. But generally, the way I pick a project of what I'm going to do and then I'm going to try to get out there is if I'm reading a script and I think that I want to sit in a theater for 2 hours and watch that, or want to spend time sitting in front of a television if it engages me, that's the way I look at it. I look at it from a consumer's perspective of, does it entertain me? I don't care about the demographics or data that it needs to hit or what it does. I just look at it from a creative standpoint. I let people like you do that.
Thank you.
You've spoken about the long production life cycles, and you've also spoken about, disruption and what the whole environment of disruption and what that experience is like. So I'm sure everybody here is wondering about the whole Kevin Spacey episode and what that's been like for you as a producer, particularly just around the time frame that you've had to kind of like re-engineer the story. Maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Well, I haven't worked with him. We dissolved Trigger Street when I went in to take over Relativity, so we weren't really working closely together. But I can't really talk about it as far as a production standpoint, or there's still accusations. Nothing's been proven. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. But frankly, I can't talk about it.
Hi, I'm Scott Nugent from Mindtree. I was curious of what your thoughts were, if you could expand on what you feel about the Movie Pass model, and also about how millennials now and people younger are paying for subscriptions through either filling out surveys or giving information to a company to allow them to forego paying the monthly subscription.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the first one first. I think it's a great idea, and it's a way to collect data and to get feedback that's real feedback, and you're giving them something in return. to get the information that you need. So I think that's a great model, and I think it will continue and should continue. The MoviePass model is great. I don't know why the theaters are resisting it. I mean, I sort of do, but I don't know why they're resisting it now, because they're still getting paid for it. But I think they see the writing on the wall of where everything is going, and they're trying as hard as they can to stop it, rather than embracing technology and embracing new ideas like that. I think MoviePass is great, because if you have that card, it's going to encourage people to go. The theater is getting money for it; it's already paid for, and then you have people coming into your building and buying your popcorn and buying your soda. So I'm baffled at why they are so resistant to it, because it's something they should totally be embracing, and it's something that could help save their business.
I guess I get to ask my question. I'm James from Pilotly, and as you talk about like different distribution models and trying to convince some of these guys, these companies, to try things differently, as a creator, do you see yourself ever trying to kind of create a direct model? Is that at a disadvantage to you? Would you prefer to keep selling to the distributor in the hope that distributors create a better experience for the end user, or do you see a world where if there was that type of portal, you would buy directly into that and deliver directly to that aggregator?
It's both. Right now, I'm reliant doing it the other way, because that's what exists. And that's how we get our projects financed. I would love to go to the other model, because then I get to control, or people like me get to control what it is that they're making. It doesn't get watered down as projects tend to do. Luckily, I've been fortunate enough to have some of my better projects where they've just kind of let the creatives do the creative, and they've turned out very well. Some of my other projects that haven't really turned out so well were a lot of decision by committee, and there was a lot of like, well, we should do this, or we should do that, or research says we should do this, or research says we should do that. Sorry, but a lot of times that doesn't work well for it. A lot of times it's great, and particularly towards the end of the film when it comes to marketing or project, that's where we really use research. And the production and the creative of it, it's not, I really don't like it as much. So having the control to do that and to go directly to the consumer, I would love it for that, and I would also love it for the financial gain.
Okay. I'd love to speak with you afterwards as well. 10 years ago, I built one of the first video aggregators, and I also built an a la carte TV service based on current content windows. So
Oh,
I'd love
cool.
to have that conversation.
Cool, very cool. I think
All right, that's all the time we got. We're going to break now.